This week on Somerville Neighborhood News, meet the developer who will transform the Powder House Community School into community space, sit in on the Union Square CAC meeting where a new player in the Community Benefits Agreement negotiations raises questions about community involvement, meet Somerville's new school superintendent, Mary Skipper, and Ward 6 residents. You've got a choice on September 17th.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Somerville Neighborhood News. Today is August 11th, 2015, and I'm Melanie Morris. Somerville Neighborhood News is your bi-monthly newscast and online source for multimedia news. It's a community service production of SCATV, created by staff, interns, and your neighbors. We bring you the news every 2 weeks on Channel 3 and on our website, somervilleneighborhoodnews.org. The former K-8 Powder House Community School on Broadway is about to be transformed. After nearly a decade of neglect, the concrete hulk will be redeveloped by the Somerville-based Marca Corporation. Our reporter Nikita Sampath shares the story.
The 88,000 square foot Powder House School between Teal and Davis Squares has stood empty since 2004. Now there's a plan in place to bring it back to life. The city and Tufts entered an agreement, but negotiations ended in May 2013 when it was learned the university did not intend to redevelop the site for a decade. Residents continue to speak about their vision for the space through community meetings.
I would like to see it have public open space. I would like to see it have public inside space as well. I think there is a lot of need for a community center.
I'm interested in seeing green space, and I'm also interested in seeing family housing.
In January of this year, the city put out a new request for proposals. 8 developers submitted plans by the March deadline. In July, the mayor accepted the advice of the search committee to grant Marca LLC the development contract. Marca's proposal was guided by the goal set by SummerVision, a comprehensive plan to make Somerville a better place to live, work, play, and raise a family.
SummerVision was a process that the city embarked on a few years back that had a tremendous amount of meetings, a lot of public input and support over a long time. And they came up with a series of goals, different types of goals: transportation infrastructure goals, housing goals, neighborhood goals, commercial corridor goals, and others. They're very detailed and very specific about what the city wants to see over the next 30 years.
The space will include senior housing designed to allow aging in place, spaces for artists to live and work, and loft-style homes, in addition to SummerVision's requirement of 40% publicly accessible open space.
Will be all open here, and so the park will seamlessly connect to the plaza, which will seamlessly connect to the courtyard, and all of it will be publicly accessible, meaning that anyone who can use this can also come in and use a movie amphitheater, which is covered. There will be building above this. There'll be seating and some light recreational activities like ping pong tables or things of the like here under cover, and then you can actually walk through, and currently we have designed a fire pit and a barbecue area with dining room.
Along with SummerVision, Marca is guided by the community, engaging with them to learn what they want the site to be.
The community for us is everyone from the local businesses in Teal and Davis to the local residents to the greater neighbors within the area, the Somerville community.
Susan McLucas of the Somerville Bike Riding School has taught 3,000 students in the Powder House parking lot over 30 years.
Whichever way you start to lean, turn.
She was a regular at the redevelopment meetings to pitch for inclusion of her bike school. McLucas's voice was finally heard last year when the idea for a park came up.
One of the developers, Sebastian Marsical, came over afterwards and said, you know, maybe we should talk. I like what you're doing. Maybe we can keep it going. And I said, oh, great. Bikes are a way that people can get out of cars and be healthier and enjoy their communities more. People can see each other.
The new space promises to bring art, education, and health-conscious activities for all generations. 7 of the 40 new residences will be affordable units. For Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Nikita Sampath.
Marca is currently working with the City and Board of Aldermen to obtain approvals and permits before beginning construction. The group hopes to complete the project within 1 year. The revitalization of Union Square has many, many moving parts. One of the most important, to local and community activists and Somerville residents is a community benefits agreement between the city and the developer. At the July 28th Union Square Civic Advisory Committee meeting, Mayor Joseph Curtatone introduced a new approach to creating that agreement. With financial support from the Barr Foundation, the city has engaged a nationally recognized real estate think tank to facilitate the negotiations. Our Heather Avison was there and brings us a look inside this 2.5-hour meeting.
What I want to say tonight is our intent is not to negotiate these issues behind closed doors. We want it to be transparent, we want it to be engaged, we want you to be involved, and you need to do the work.
Having set the stage for a collaborative meeting, the mayor then introduced Chris Lineberger, president of Locus, a real estate think tank that advocates for mixed-income, walkable urban communities. Lineberger acknowledged Somerville's commitment to social equity and a public benefits plan before outlining his vision of successful community development.
Our definition of social equity is a combination of housing affordability and transportation accessibility. Most of us in the urbanism world understand that you have to look at both. And you look at household spending on both housing and transportation, and shifting it to spending that money on housing, on education, on savings, and keeping it local. That's going to be the big macro shift over the next generation, and it's already happening because of this trend towards walkable urban development. So what we want to lay out for you, if you want it, is a strategic planning process for Union Square for both economic growth and social equity. This has got to be a mixed income place if it's really successful. And one is to recognize how great places evolve. There's a very important role for the public sector. Public sector sets the table. Zoning, infrastructure provision, all sorts of stuff that the public sector has to do before anybody shows up. Another important role is the private sector. Private sector builds 80% of the built environment. Private sector doesn't show up, things don't get built. Look what's happened for the last 50 years. In Somerville, it's kind of been bumping along. But now it's your time.
Lineberger laid out his plans for a 2-day education and strategy session with decision makers to create a framework for moving forward.
And it starts with making sure that we all understand, and particularly I need to understand this, the various issues that you've been talking about working on for the last number of years, really. I mean, the CAC's been around for a couple years, but before that, you know, summer vision and all, I mean, you've done some remarkable work. You've done a lot of the heavy lifting. What I'm hoping this process will do will bring it to closure. But taking all that information about the vision, about the infrastructure, about programs that are needed, that needs to make sure that everybody on the CAC and anybody else involved with this process will be up to speed. This works under the assumption, this is my Quaker background, works under the assumption that you bring people together, people of goodwill come together, you educate everybody about the same stuff, they all know the same thing, and then you give them what I refer to as the universe of options. That's going to be on day 2, of what the skeleton is of a strategy.
The question of just who the decision makers are and who will be invited to the table took center stage once the presentation turned to Q&A.
My question is, you're talking about a 2-day, the strategy and action plan, like 2-day kind of meeting, and I'm not clear from what you're describing here who gets to be at that meeting. Is that an open meeting for all, you know, residents of Somerville, or who's in that conversation?
I'm also wondering why this process exists, if there's a community that has done a lot of this work and can speak to a lot of the issues that you're talking about.
You mentioned that the decision makers are going to be in the room. Is that going to include the Somerville Redevelopment Authority?
You tell me.
If it makes sense, we'll be there.
Because they're the ones that are going to be making the decisions, right?
Well, let me just say this. If I need to be there, I'm going to be there. If representatives of the SRA have to be there, they'll be there. But what I want is open, candid dialogue. I think we all need that in this process.
The thing about these places is, again, more is better, and we're all in this together. This isn't if you turn it into a combative process, you all lose. You're shooting yourself in the foot. And the vitality that's going to make this a very special place will go someplace else.
Well, for the past year, the CAC as an entity, we've been talking about community benefits and social equity. And for the past year or more, Union United has been talking about it. And I think that there's a very big level of tension in the room there because they thought that this is going to be the first meeting where we're really going to be talking about it. But at the same time, we don't have a process. We don't know how to get there. So the fundamental question about whether we spend 2 days with you and everybody in the room, not just the CAC, whether you spend 2 days with us and more, if you can help us find that path to actually close that gap and start implementing some of the types of things that Union United as a group has been looking at more than the CAC has up until this point, I think it would be a tremendous value to this entire process.
So we want decision makers in the room that are able to make decisions about, to make commitments about what they're going to do, and they can credibly volunteer to do things to help make it happen. If you have a lot of people that are just bitching and moaning, it's important to listen, important to hear people's concerns. What we need in the room are people that are going to make things happen.
Meeting dates are being finalized. According to the scope of work submitted by Locus, a strategic planning task force made up of the CAC and additional representatives that could include the master developer, subject experts and city staff will be formed before the meetings. This election cycle, there's a highly contested alderman's race in Ward 6. Alderman Rebecca Goritz will not seek re-election after serving for almost 10 years. 4 candidates will appear on that September primary ballot. Joe Lynch, host of Greater Somerville, recently profiled the candidates. Here's an excerpt from each candidate's appearance.
I would like to see the buses and the subway system minimally free, and use the money that comes from the surtax on millionaires that's being moved in a constitutional amendment for 2016, 2018.
Speaking of funding,
can I just add
sure.
one point to that? Aside from taking maybe $40,000 from a millionaire's tax obligation to generate this $1 billion, we're also going to save low and moderate income people who use public transportation anywhere up to $1,500 a year in pre-tax spending. So not only do we have people pay their fair share at the top, but we also have a way to lighten the financial burden on people at the bottom. The rents keep going up, but if we can make the transportation component of people's budgets less, then they will have more that they can handle their housing costs with in the interim while we look for some solutions that are more meaningful.
Affordable housing is an issue that cuts right to the core of the reason I'm running. As I said, we lose the diversity in the city, we lose the character of these communities, and we lose a big piece of what makes Somerville the city that my wife and I decided to raise our family in, and that so many people want to be a part of. There's a number of good projects that are in the works. As I said, the Sustainable Neighborhoods Working Group is looking at citywide proposals for both funding and actual on-the-ground mechanisms that we can either enhance or add. In Ward 6, I think that's where changes to zoning, inclusionary zoning, linkage fees, there's things that we can do that will, on a small scale, hopefully impact affordability. Development projects that don't have condos but that have apartments, for example. Small scale, or look up on Highland Ave the Quick Mart site.
Sure, corner of Cedar and Highland Avenue.
Exactly.
Yep.
The initial proposal there was reworked, and they added an affordable unit there. So significant, large scale in Ward 6, it'd be a real challenge. I'd like to see it if there's an opportunity to do so, but it's going to be more of a multiple small scale solutions, at least in Ward 6.
And then the last thing that I would consider is whether there's more we can do for long-term renters. And so the city has a very generous owner-occupier exemption. And as a
just been pushed to 35%.
That's correct.
Yep.
And as a homeowner, I'm heartened to see it. I would like to look at whether we could extend that to landlords of long-term tenants. I think that it takes a lot of work for a landlord to do the right things to keep a tenant long-term, right? Make sure that you don't raise your rent at every opportunity. Make sure that the upkeep, that you do the necessary upkeep on your property. And I think the landlords that are doing the right thing in our city should be rewarded, and I think we should look at the consequences of providing some sort of reward for them.
Reward incentive.
Reward incentive,
Same
absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely.
Same thing.
And we all know that issues of housing and housing costs are a big part of the conversation in Somerville and in many cities across America right now. And as a renter myself, and there are very few renters who are active in city politics at the moment, I hope to be a bridge between the community of folks who have chosen Somerville as a place to spend a few of their years when they're in their 20s and 30s, and with the city's long-term priorities and goals. Finally, as an education professional, I hope I would likewise be a bridge with the schools committee and with all of the city's education priorities and all of these. Working in education, I see how closely tied up issues of housing costs are with issues of educational outcomes. These things go hand in hand, and to improve one, you improve the other. And you can watch the entire hour at SCATV.org or on YouTube at Greater Somerville Election Special 2015. The Ward 6 primary election will be held on Thursday, September 17th. The last day to register to vote in the primary is Friday, August 28th. Now let's see what's in this week's Somerville Journal.
Hello, this week in the Somerville Journal, we'll be looking at how the aldermen are determining where to put medicinal marijuana facilities. We'll be taking a look at the controversy about artificial turf at Lincoln Park, and we'll be checking in on the latest construction on McGrath Highway. You can always find us online at somerville.wickedlocal.com, follow us on Twitter at VilleJournal, and get in touch with me at 617-629-3385 or datkinson@wickedlocal.com.
Guess what? It's hard to believe that students will be back in the classroom in less than a month. When the doors open at Somerville schools, there will be a new superintendent in charge. Her name, Mary Skipper. She brings a wide range of experience from the classics to emerging technology with her. She also brings a local perspective. Heather Avison sat down with Ms. Skipper recently, and here's an excerpt from that interview.
How did someone who studied Greek and Latin and the classics and taught that make the transition to, I want to start a school that's going to bring in technology?
So it's interesting. I mean, life is so full circle, and at times you don't realize a deviation of a path where it will lead. But I was teaching Latin and Greek, and I had a stint where I was teaching at Boston College High School, and there they had a need for somebody who could do technology integration and really kind of push the technology vision at the school at the time. And I actually did that. I kind of left the Latin and Greek, was doing that less, and became more of a technology person. And I saw the profound difference it made to kids and to staff to have technology as a tool to engage, to really customize the students' learning, to really let their mind from an inquiry standpoint go in a direction that sometimes a traditional classroom set doesn't allow for. What I actually think makes a critical difference at TAP Boston is the relationships of the students with the teachers and the students with the general staff. I think it's a real relational model of education, and we're dealing with an urban population that really needs stability, to know that they are loved, that folks have high expectations of them, and I think that that all actualizes in TAP Boston. And so, I often point to it on many levels as a way for urban ed, a model for urban ed, that I certainly can't take credit for, but my staff as a whole collectively can.
Which you're coming to a population that is in a lot of ways similar to the Boston population in terms of economic need and diversity, cultural diversity. How are you shaping bringing your experience to the Somerville schools?
Well, it's a sweet spot for me in that, it's an urban, Somerville is a wonderful, small urban city, but it's also where I grew up. So not only is, it allowing for me to be able to serve students that I deeply care for and families that I deeply care for, but it also is a place where I have very fond memories. I mean, it shaped who I am. I grew up in Arlington on the Doughboy line, but growing up so close to the Doughboy line, I spent a great deal of time in Somerville. I learned to swim at the MDC there. I learned to bowl at Sacco's on Sundays. I went on to Tufts. I played at Trump Field. I mean, I have a lot of great collective memories about Somerville. And just being back in this area, you know, I've met people, reacquainted with people that I haven't seen in a decade. And so it's a nice feeling of the comfort of being in urban end, but at the same time being in a place that is familiar to me. When I talked to people and consulted with people, I was overwhelmed by how much people genuinely love Somerville and want the best for the students in Somerville. And so for that, in that way, because I'm extremely hyper student centered, you know, I really center my thinking and my philosophy around what benefits the individual student. This is a great fit. You know, and I think anytime there's a new superintendent or, you know, a new leader, people are nervous. Like, is this person going to bring their team? Am I going to be displaced? You know, where do I fit? And I'm a developer. I'm not. I don't replace. I develop, and I work in a team mentality to do that. So I'm not bringing people with me from Boston. I'm very happy with the team that's here. I think it's a very talented team. I think it's a team that's eager to make Somerville not just good and in pockets great with our scores, but to make it a great district, so that no matter what school a student is in, there's 100% confidence that is the best school for my student. And every student, regardless of whether a student is an English language learner, a special education student, or, you know, a student who comes with a lot of trauma or at risk, every student has that opportunity to reach potential. I'm excited about developing a talent core that speaks to that. And so really it will be, what are the supports teachers need? What's the professional development look like? How can we create teaching lab and a leading lab here that other districts, urban and non-urban, want to come to because it's happening here in Somerville?
You can learn more about the new superintendent and her educational objectives on Tuesday, August 25th. Somerville Neighborhood News will devote the entire half hour that evening to the interview with Ms. Skipper. The ability to save a life doesn't only belong to those with a medical degree. Just knowing CPR or cardiopulmonary resuscitation can make the difference between life and death. In tonight's Medical Minute, Dr. Ira Michelson encourages all of us to learn this life-saving technique.
Hello, Dr. Ira Michelson for the Somerville Neighborhood News. I want to talk to you today about CPR. What is CPR? Cardiopulmonary resuscitation. This is a term we've all heard of, but what really is it? This is a technique that will allow you to help somebody whose heart has stopped. Imagine you're in a crowd or you're out someplace and all of a sudden somebody collapses. Their heart is no longer beating. If you know CPR, you can administer help and keep them alive until the EMTs get there and transport the victim to the hospital. Part of this technique involves actually compressing, pushing down on the chest to keep the heart going and make the blood circulate. Another part of the technique is giving the patient intermittent breaths or ventilating the patient to give them some oxygen. Together, these two maneuvers will keep the patient alive. This can be carried on for 20-30 minutes if necessary until advanced help arrives and gets that patient to the hospital. I'm going to urge everybody to take a CPR course. Where can you do this? Actually, right in your local community. The YMCA has it, the Red Cross has it, and many schools have it. So if you haven't learned CPR, I'm urging you to go out, take a course. This is something that could help you to save a life. For the Somerville Neighborhood News, Dr. Ira Michelson.
And if you want to learn more, many local organizations have classes coming up this fall. To find nearby sessions, contact the Somerville YMCA at 617-625-5050 or somervilleymca.org. You can also contact the Somerville Hospital Cardiopulmonary Department at 617-591-4057 or online at challiance.org. And lastly, the Red Cross is always there. You can reach the Boston office at 617-274-5200 or at redcross.org. You can watch Dr. Michelson on Taking Back Your Health, Thursdays at 7 p.m. on Channel 3, or of course anytime at SCATTVSomerville.org. No bigger than a few parking spaces, a tiny, tiny oasis encourages passersby to sit and linger in comfort along bustling Somerville Avenue. Somerville Neighborhood News stopped by the official opening of the city's first public parklet.
Outdoor space and sort of integrating outdoor space with our cafes is something that we've always liked. So Diesel, for example, has the opening garage door. Block 11 has the courtyard adjacent to the actual physical space. And one of the things that we really were missing here was kind of this sort of integrated outdoor cafe type seating area. I think the thing that is really a great part of Somerville, especially doing business in Somerville, is that they're very interested in supporting business and then also walking and biking and any sort of outdoor community space where people can gather. So this is something that, you know, obviously people had thought about within the city community and also was something that they were in complete full support of. We initially met with Mary Ann Houston and then people from the strategic planning department and just got, you know, complete full support.
As we all know, Somerville is a very dense community and has a huge need for public space. There is so much demand in this city for public space of every kind, and progressive cities around the country are realizing that they can be creative in the ways that they design and build new public spaces.
The interesting thing for me is that we weren't the only ones sitting thinking about parklets. They came to us and said, I want to build a parklet. They used the name. They didn't say, I want to build a platform on the side of the sidewalk. But, I mean, that just shows you how successful they've become. They kind of got invented around Parking Day. A firm that invented Parking Day actually took over 2 parking spaces by paying the meter for the entire day, and Parking Day evolved from that. And that firm's actually called Rebar, and they were from San Francisco. And San Francisco watched that happen as again, a bottom-up thing happening right out of the resident's mind. And that evolved over time into a formalized parklet program.
We're not talking about changing the curb lines, cutting up this granite, taking 2 years in design and engineering, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're testing an idea. It's light, it's cheap, it's quick. And if it doesn't work, it's not that big a deal to not do it again next year.
Definitely communicate with the city about trying to find out more information, because they're definitely coming up with a program for parklets so that the application process will be a little bit more streamlined. Although I don't know how it could have gone quicker for us, but at least there will be some sort of application process established, and hopefully some support too from the community at large for the parklets.
And that's our newscast for tonight. We'll be back on August 25th at 7 p.m. on Channel 3. In the meantime, check out our news stories at somervilleneighborhoodnews.org. Also, visit our Facebook page, SCATV SNN, to comment and share your favorite segments. Tweet us at SCATV SNN. We welcome you to get involved, become a reporter, or just share your story ideas. Call us at 617-628-8826 or email us at news@scatvsomerville.org. I'm Melanie Morris. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you around the neighborhood.